music. It's good.
Welcome to episode 25, question mark, of CoOperators. This is our belated Halloween, I almost said holiday. Well, technically it is a holiday.
Kind of is a holiday.
But it's our belated Halloween episode. I'm Augmented Biscuits, and with me always is Chucking Dice.
What up?
Also, was that music from the NES classic Bram Stoker's Dracula?
No, it's not, actually.
God damn it.
It's from Sweet Home, which
Okay.
I'm going to talk about later.
Sweet. Home.
Sweet.
So welcome back. I know it's been a while since the last episode. We've had a lot going on. Chucking Dice was drafted into the Space Corps. Space Corps?
Space Corps?
Space Corps. I don't know.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. We've been drinking heavily.
We did. We went to a Halloween party that was, I mean, we do everything late. It was a Halloween party that was a week after Halloween.
Yeah, because everybody's schedule was kind of wonky, so
Yeah.
they couldn't really go to a Halloween party.
Right.
But it was nice.
It was nice, yeah. We dressed up. We had some food. I brought some food myself.
Also, I gotta say kudos to your vegetarian spread. You
Right.
had tofu, which was really tasty. Which
Right.
I'm always worried of just tofu pieces by themselves because they always taste like crap. But yours was really good.
There's a way to make tofu, and it's like some people make tofu just straight tofu. They can throw it in a soup or whatever, which I think is good. But there's a way to fry tofu to make it actually taste good. And I already told you, like frying it in olive oil, that's how you make it taste good.
See, that was really tasty, and I
Yeah.
wish I would have eaten more of it. And then you also made japchae, which is always my favorite.
It's like a stir-fried noodle.
Glass noodles, right?
Glass noodles, yeah. They're made out of sweet potato. So for those of you who are gluten-free, you can actually eat japchae.
Yeah. And then you had, which I loved, which I couldn't get enough of, were your dumplings.
Yeah, those are just like, I got those from the Korean store. I steam them and then fry them. That's my secret.
You didn't make them?
I didn't make them, no.
God damn it.
Like, okay, so when I was living in Korea, me and my sister, we like the dumpling. We like dumpling, Korean style dumpling. It's called mandu. And like my grandmother at the time, she said like basically she's like, oh, you guys want some mandu? It's like we're gonna have this woman make the mandu, and like she makes it from scratch, so it took forever. It took better part of the entire afternoon until the sun went down, and then we got it at like 7 or 8 o'clock.
Essentially, it was your breakfast.
Yeah, and like
or late dinner.
I mean, it was good. I'll say that, but it was irritating because they were like, "Oh, it's going to be really great. It's going to be really great." And it's like it's not going to get to you until like 8 hours later.
Yeah, actually, that's the funny thing is like a lot of ethnic food is like that because I know that's how tamales are. With Mexican families, is you spend all goddamn day making tamales,
Right.
And by the end of the night, shit, actually into the morning, you're finally eating them, and it's like, fuck, these took forever.
Right.
But yeah, kudos to Chucking Dice's vegetarian spread, which were really good.
The guests, the place where we were having a party at, they're mostly vegetarian.
A lot of them, most of them were vegetarian.
Yeah.
There was one guest in particular who was looking at your dumplings and wasn't sure.
Right.
And I said, "Oh no, it's all vegetarian."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, awesome!" And
Yeah.
he was just like, "This is awesome."
Yeah, I soaked it in chicken broth first. And
You
then
put a little meat juice because you know our.
No, it was all vegetarian. I have a lot of vegetarian like friends, and I'll always kind of figure out a way to kind of translate Korean food into vegetarian food. So
we had a Halloween party. Just life happens.
Yeah, I mean, we try to like do this on a regular kind of.
Actually, bigger thing was me. I went out of town for a weekend.
Right.
I went on a.
You went to Oregon. You went
I
to
went
Portlandia.
to Portlandia.
How was
actually, it was fun. It was. I enjoyed it. My kids, most of them enjoyed it. My oldest son, probably by like the second, third day, he was getting a little antsy.
Right.
The nice thing though was, my wife had a lot of stuff planned. We went to Voodoo Donuts. We went to the Oregon Zoo, which is nice. Went to the Children's Museum, and then we hung out with because my wife has family there, so we hung out with her aunt.
Right.
We went to like a flea market. Well, Oregon has they call it the Saturday market, which also happens on Sunday, which I think it's funny.
That's bullshit.
But what was awesome was I was able to get pierogies, which were fucking great, and then we also got empanadas, and we got this one pumpkin empanada. Was essentially a pumpkin pie.
That sounds interesting. Yeah.
And it was really really good.
Yeah.
Like my wife's aunt and her cousin make their own pumpkin pie, but when they tried it, they're like, yeah, we got to make these instead. They were good. So it was fun. We came back. We went for a weekend. We came back. Gotta say the Voodoo Donuts, good. They were good.
Good, but you had better.
Well, it's not that I have better, but there's nothing unique about it.
Right.
It's just I think what makes them unique is the presentation. I got a maple bar with bacon on it, so it was a maple bacon bar. So it's just getting a regular old maple bar and throwing bacon on top of it, which was, again, nothing special, but it was good.
Right. I'm kind of old-fashioned with donuts. I like just sprinkles or like chocolate frosting. There's a donut place off of Magnolia called Donut Hut that I love going to because I don't know. There's just a way that they make it just tastes really good.
I do too. I had Donut Hut a few times, but I think I think my preference in Burbank would have to be Dad's Donut because they make a really good crumb donut.
Yeah.
And their chocolate cake with peanuts on top is really good for some reason. Right. But moving on.
Yeah, moving on. We're all pre-diabetic.
So Oregon was awesome. Right. A lot of trees. That's what I love about Oregon is a lot of trees.
Right.
Great setting for something like Silent Hill to happen in Oregon. But it was nice. It was nice. Right. I actually enjoyed my time in Oregon. I wish their public transit was like ours, but can't have anything. All right, moving on. What do we got first?
Okay. Since this is supposed to be like a belated Halloween special, I'm just going to share what I did for Halloween.
What did you do for Halloween, Chuck and Dice?
Well, I usually like Halloween, but it happens on a weekday. Most times it does happen on a weekday, which kind of sucks because you can't really go to parties. You have to go like either the week after, or in our case the week before, or in our case the week after.
Yeah. And it was kind of a downer because it happened on like in the middle of the week too. Yeah, it was like, a Wednesday?
Tuesday, I think. It happened,
you're right, Tuesday.
It happened on the same night as like the World Series game, so a lot of like activities I think were toned down just because a lot of people went to the Dodgers game.
I think that also affected people giving out candy because we went to the local neighborhoods. Not a lot, like maybe every fourth house was giving away candy.
Right. I saw at least in Burbank on Friday they were doing that with all the local businesses. Oh. And there was a lot of food trucks out, which I took advantage of and like pushed kids out of the way trying to get candy.
Nice, good, good job. I would expect nothing less of Chuck and Dice to shove kids out of the way.
Yeah, stupid little shit. So let's move on. And on Halloween, me and my friend Jorge, we got together and like we were just like, let's go watch a horror film. We love horror films. We don't usually get scared at horror films, but we can still enjoy the craftsmanship in putting together a horror film. And if it's a well-told story, we'll probably really like it. So we went to the Lamley 7, which is off of Lancashire. It's a not really I would call it an art house theater. It shows a lot of independent films, and at the time they were doing Zed Fest, which I guess they were showing a series of like different horror films, and the one that we saw, I'm bringing up the poster right now, is the Terror of Hallows' Eve, and I believe the director is Todd Tucker, who directed this. This was a low budget film. The actual cast was there, the director was there. I think most of the crew were there too. Like we weren't like invited to this thing. We just saw it on like listed in the listings of the theater, and we decided, well, it's down the street from where I live. I'm just gonna walk over there, and let's go check it out. So the story of this movie is that it's about a kid named Tim. He's basically like a special effects wizard when it has to do with makeup effects. This entire movie takes place in 1983, by the way. So it's sort of like a throwback film, but you kind of don't feel it, but that's what they just start with the opening narration is that this is 1983. Here's this kid who is a big fan of like horror makeup effects. In fact, in the opening scene, like, you know, this girl who's like walking around his neighborhood like finds him, and he's like cut open with all these like intestines, you know, out, and it looks really good. The girl freaks and like blood sprays on her, and she like runs away, and the kid gets up, like just starts like, you know, having a good laugh and stuff because it was like it's a little Halloween prank. So he's basically Tommy Jarvis, is if anyone's seen the Friday the 13th series. Tommy Jarvis is also a character that was like into like special effects makeup, and also based on the film, the real life special effects makeup artist Tom Savini. They have the same name. So this is Tim, not Tom. Of course, Tom is picked on by bullies. You know, he's like one of those nerdy kids. And of course, he has this affinity to the bully's like girlfriend, who also basically doesn't hate him. I don't think she likes him in that way, but you know, she's with this like,
she's got no animosity towards him.
She has, and like when the bully starts hassling him, she's just like, you know, stop that and yada 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 yada. Like one thing leads to another, and like he's like really beaten badly by these bullies. Now, here's the thing: the movie in this beginning part is actually pretty darn good. Like performances are done well. I really like Tim's mom, whose name eludes me right now, but she was a really good actress and played the role really well. And like, you know, I thought, oh, this might be one of those like sleeper hits. Later on, after he's like, you know, basically punished by these bullies, he ends up finding this sort of weird book in his attic for no reason at all. And it tells about the story of the jester and how you can summon the jester to basically, you know, manifest all your, you know, your needs. And so he finds this like weird pumpkin in this like, you know, in this like just area where like I think a little bit of his blood goes inside of it, and he says something like, you know, I wish I could scare them all to death. And he's like including the girlfriend as well, because, you know, he's saying like, you know, they belong to each other because all this stuff happened to him. And so what ends up happening is that like the jester appears. He's this like CG mess of a character. He kind of looks like the cross between Gollum and Benjamin Button. And it just wasn't very hilarious. Yeah, it wasn't terrifying at all. It just, you know, it looked like a cartoon. And he manipulates Tim's sort of like imagination to create these ways of killing these bullies. And like it sounded like a really good concept, and it actually has been done before in another movie called Cellar Dweller, which was directed by, I think, John Carl Buechler, where it's about a girl who, you know, unlocks this cellar dweller, and it's like fueled by her imagination and like kind of kills her friends. This is kind of the same concept. With Terrors of Hallows' Eve, it's more of a revenge story. So, I mean, one by one, the bullies end up getting killed in these like sort of imaginative ways. There's actually this really cool scene with marionette puppets, and it's all like stop motion. And I thought that scene was really good, but like overall, it just like it's supposed to, like I guess the jester said like you were supposed to fuel their like their biggest fears, and I feel that didn't actually happen. Because there's like a fat bully, he just sees a pie and he just starts eating it, and this tree monster ends up killing him. Spoiler alert. There's going to be a lot of spoilers. But it just didn't seem like that's the biggest thing he feared. He didn't like mention anything about like how he feared tree monsters. There was this one guy, the stoner guy, who like mentioned something about like watching Sesame Street High is a whole new experience, and that, you could kind of say that that's how he was killed by the marionette puppets. I mean, I guess that sort of made sense, but the head bully ends up getting killed by a woman in the shadows with these like large breasts. So I'm not sure if he gave any inkling to having fear of like hot women, because it didn't seem so, but it just kind of happened that way. And eventually, yeah, the jester ends up going after the girlfriend, and of course Tim is like, feels, no, not her, I just spoke out of, rage, and yada, 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 yada. So the rest of the movie is Tim and this girl trying to like elude the jester and trying to like outsmart him. Blah 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 blah. Long story short, she ends up getting killed, and the mom comes home and she basically finds all the dead bodies in the living room while Tim's like in his like couch on his couch waking up with a knife in his hand. So basically, I guess how I felt like it was being played out is that was this in his head or did this jester actually exist? And the thing is that if it ended right there, it would have been a very average film. I'd be like, it's an average film. I mean, the guy did the director Todd Tucker did the best that he could with the resources he had, and I'm not going to take that away from him. Unfortunately, for some reason, it decides to fast forward to the present day, and then Tim is older. He's in an insane asylum, and then there's this woman orderly just got hired, and basically like researching his story, the story that we already read or watched previously. So it's like this weirdly tacked on ending that ends with like a phone call from someone saying like, I need to talk to him. And like the woman orderly is like, talk to who? And it's like, I need to ask him about the jester. And like, as that line was being delivered, the woman orderly is flipping through that Tim's file and then comes up to a picture of the jester. And that's where it ends. And I was just like, that's like a deleted scene, or I mean,
sounds
I
like
guess,
an alternate ending.
Yeah, I think like it's like if you're gonna go to the present day, why you're just staying here for like about 5 minutes until the end of the movie? I don't know why that was decided. It seems like it should have been a deleted scene that like just didn't work with the ending. I don't know. It's like the director was just fell in love with the subject matter and like kind of made it overstay its welcome, and it went from an average film to wow, that was a god awful ending.
Yeah. Seems like he started off great. Maybe he should have focused more on kind of like the relationship the kid had and kind of like his talents and more
less on this repercussion kind of thing.
I didn't even when you started talking about it, I didn't even think there was going to be some kind of like supernatural force. I thought he was going to use like his
special effects things.
The special effects things to kind of get revenge on them or at least kind of teach them a lesson or something.
I mean, I guess that would make it definitely a better film. It makes it that's why I like the original, I guess what I thought was the ending, where you don't know if he really killed these people with this jester character. Because it literally appears from nowhere. He goes into his attic and finds a book. And, I get that if they, like say in Evil Dead, they go to an old cabin. It was made this year.
You sure they weren't trying to do the whole Death Note thing?
I mean, maybe, but even then, Death Note it's a different type of story.
Yeah. I mean, you talking about that ending too, that kind of tacked on ending that reminds me of Paranormal Activity, the first one.
All right.
Because the ending, when I saw Paranormal Activity, I saw it on, I think it was on demand.
Right.
I ordered it on I ordered it on demand, and the ending that they showed was the ending where, the ending where the police show up, and she has a knife in her hand.
She slits her throat.
And they kill her. No, they shoot her.
They shoot her. Okay.
Like she's like rocking. She comes back upstairs. She has a knife in her hand, and she pretty much just sits down and rocks back and forth until the morning.
Right.
And the cops show up, and when they come upstairs, she like is kind of in a daze and she doesn't know what the hell's going on. So she's like, "Oh, what's going on?" And she has a knife in her hand. She's going towards the police, and they shoot her.
Okay.
And then I saw the other endings, because they had like 4 different endings for it.
Well, the theatrical ending is different.
Yeah, the theatrical ending.
I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, and the theatrical ending is the theatrical ending the one where she turns into a demon and
demon face and goes to this camera.
So that one was lame.
Right.
And then they had another one where she slits her own throat,
which is the original ending.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's how the director originally wanted it ended, but
was it she wanted to slice her own throat? Yeah, basically kill herself.
Basically, I guess the idea is that like the same. You don't know if the supernatural stuff is happening, or you don't know if she's crazy.
And that was the thing, and it's like, that was insane. Like, I wish they would have gone with that ending as well, which is the cop shooter, and they wonder, like, was there an actual demon, or was she just...
Yeah. But I guess, they figured, we're sitting on a gold mine, and we need to make this we need to make this like a tentpole movie so we can do 6 of these films in the future.
And this is a smaller release, right? This isn't like a huge studio movie.
No, this is not a huge. They wanted to be released in theaters, but I really think that the Jester's like look is gonna kind of like people are gonna stay away just because it just looks ridiculous. Like I said, it's like a Benjamin Button mixed with Golem, and just doesn't look good at all. But moving on.
You sound very disappointed.
Well, it was just like, you want to go see a horror movie on Halloween, and you always want to be surprised. You want to be like you want to just find that gem in this this diamond in the rough. I mean, I did see a movie on Netflix that was pretty good. It was Gerald's Game with Bruce Greenwood and Carla Gugino, who I'm secretly in love with. Carla Gugino was in Watchmen. She was like Silk Spectre's mom. I remember her from this like science fiction television show that both what's his name, Tyrion Lannister and Data were in.
Was she in the? She was in the Mermaid Story, wasn't she?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it was on Cinemax. Yeah, and her.
She's just this like very Italian-looking woman.
Yeah, she's hot.
Yeah, I know.
She's very, very attractive.
But that was a great film.
She was in Sin City. Yeah,
she was in
she's
Sin
really
City.
good.
Yeah, she's really good. It was on Netflix. It was a great film. It's based on a Stephen King book I've never read, but I'd say check that out and like maybe not check out.
I'm surprised she doesn't get more roles, like bigger roles, because she's a really good actress. And
I think she's very careful about choosing roles because like she's done a lot of indie stuff. I think she's like more of an indie kind of actress.
She did do what was that movie with the Rock and the earthquake?
Oh, I don't know.
San Andreas.
San Andreas. There you go.
Yeah.
Let's move on here. Going on the theme of Halloween, because I don't think we have that many themes here, is that I want to talk about this old game called Sweet Home. Now, this is a very interesting game. It's an RPG made by Capcom.
It's not Sweet Home Alabama.
No, it's not Sweet Home Alabama.
Okay, God, I hate that song.
I learned about this game a long time ago, and I've always wanted to play it. They came out with an English ROM, so you can play it on an emulator, or you can get a repro cart, but I don't have a old Nintendo to play any of this stuff on. It's made by Capcom. It's an RPG, which is very unusual because Capcom is not known to, at least to my knowledge, Capcom's not known about making RPGs. And what's interesting about this RPG, it's horror themed, and it also came out at the same time as a movie called Sweet Home, which is about the same subject matter. So like the ongoing like kind of like unknown thing about this game is what came first, the idea for the film or the idea for the game. The film I've watched, and it's not really anything to write home about. It's not bad. It's way better than Terror of Hallows' Eve. But it's kind of like a just kind of like a unevenly paced film at times, but I think it's good. But I can see other people watching it and not really seeing that same why it's good or whatever. They might think it's boring or whatever. The game, on the other hand, is does a better. It's infinitely better in terms of atmosphere and like creating tension, and it's actually produced by the same guy who did the Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil game, Takura Fujiwara. My Japanese is terrible. So in Sweet Home, you control a documentary crew. Each of them have a special ability. You can actually rename the characters, which, like, if you do play this game, I actually highly, highly, highly recommend, because it's, I don't know, if you're not used to Japanese name, it's hard to remember who's who. But, like, I'm just going off this list right here. Kazu, who's the leader of the documentary group, the producer, I guess, has a lighter. Akiko is like the nurse. She has this thing called the remedy, or if you play different translations, it's a first aid kit. Taro has the camera. Asuko has a vacuum cleaner, and Emi has like a skeleton key. And these are items that can be used multiple times, and there's an indefinite amount of times you can use it. It's not like you use the vacuum cleaner once or the kit once. Mm-hmm. And they have different abilities. Akiko's kit can actually help you with poison or curse or anything, any kind of like status kind of attacks. Taro's camera can unveil clues. Asuka's vacuum cleaner can if there's like broken glass that's blocking you, you can use the vacuum cleaner to vacuum it up, and then you can proceed down a path. Emmy's key obviously opens doors. The cool thing about it is that you have to basically control 2 parties, and there's a 3-person limit. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of guiding 2 different groups through this sort of giant mansion that's haunted, and that's how that's what they were kind of hired to do. They were hired to kind of investigate this mansion, find out why it's haunted, and what ends up happening is that they get kind of some huge avalanche happens and blocks the door, and now the goal is we have to get out here alive. And to do that, we have to kind of venture through the mansion and kind of find these fresco paintings, and each fresco painting has a clue on it. So if you take a picture of it, it'll reveal a clue. Sometimes they're dirty, so you have to use a vacuum cleaner to clean it. Mm-hmm. And then
I think meant dirty, nudity or something.
Oh yeah, nah. And you have to kind of clean it and then take a picture of it. Mm-hmm. And they'll kind of give you a clue of what to do next, or where there's a certain item that you have to grab to use on another item, so that you can get another clue to kind of move forward in the game. It's really fun. It's kind of really ahead of its time, because normally when you play an NES RPG, it's usually, okay, fight monster, fight monster, fight monster, fight monster. Okay, go to this dungeon, fight dragon. Okay, now you fought this dragon, go to town and talk to this king, who's going to lead you to another dungeon where you have to fight monster, and then fight another boss or whatever. This one's different, where it's you're unveiling clues on what happened in this house, why is it haunted, who is this voice that you're hearing, this disembodied voice that you're hearing around the mansion. And it's just a very atmospheric game. Music-wise, it's not cutting edge. The music in the beginning that we were listening to, that's actually from Sweet Home. That's the battle music. But atmospheric-wise, it kind of works, and you can see how this influenced Resident Evil. They even have cutscenes where doors are opening, just like Resident Evil, where the doors were there to kind of hide the fact that it was loading the next scene. Here, it's just done for atmosphere because it's an old Famicom game that obviously it's pretty much Nintendo. Now, yeah, the downside is that it's all random encounter battles. So you're going to be fighting various monsters like maniacs, possessed dolls, bats, maggots, just different types of monsters. And they have so many weird attacks. The maniac is got all these boils on his skin, and he can ooze pus on you, which can I guess make you poisoned or whatever. Thankfully, though, these battles are very painless. Your character basically levels up pretty rapidly. Mm-hmm. If you use any kind of healing item, it's what they call tonics. Mm-hmm. If you have you can actually call the other crew to kind of help you in the fight. So it's going to be 5 people against one enemy. And if you use the tonic, then everyone's healed. The only problem is that there's only I think 21 tonics in the entire mansion, and there's no other way to heal besides that. But you're not so much in danger of being killed in normal combat. You're more in danger of being killed if there's some kind of status attack. If you're cursed or whatever, then that'll rapidly make you lose hit points, after the battle. So you'd have to use the nurse's first aid kit to kind of cure a curse, like you do in real life. But a lot of people will say, well, it's turn-based battle. It's not as bad as you think. There's no multiple enemies, so it's not 2 maniacs will attack you. You have to attack 1 maniac, and if that 1 maniac dies, and you have to attack the second one. It just attacks you with simple enemies that kind of show up, and everyone can attack it. And there's no, it's a means to an end to kind of keep the game kind of action-packed. But if you do die in the game, there are traps that can actually cause you to die, that means that character's dead. You cannot resurrect anyone in this game. There's no Phoenix down. There's no you have to take him to the hospital and talk to the person oh, they brought him in. It all takes place in the mansion, and if that character dies, they're dead. You can find items to replace whatever item that they had. Like I think with like the lighter, you can actually find a matchbox, which basically does the same thing as lighter, but that means one of your other characters has to carry that around, and there is very limited inventory space, just like Resident Evil. So you have to do inventory management at the same time. So basically, don't get any of your characters dead, because if they do die, they're gone. It does alter the ending, so that you'll get like a slightly different ending when you finish the game. But it's a lot harder. I'm playing it right now, and I'm maybe halfway through. So far, I haven't been running into a lot of bad stuff. The main thing is that you can do an active save, so you can save anywhere outside of a cutscene and a battle scene. So that like if you do have a character die, you can restore it to that point automatically, and it'll just bring you back to that point. You don't have to go to an overworld map and save. You don't have to go to like a typewriter and save. That's why I think this game is like really ahead of its time. It makes the RPG a lot easier for people who aren't into RPGs. I'm heavily into RPGs, so that's why I like this, because it kind of corrects all the mistakes that sometimes RPGs do.
Yeah, for the sake why I hate JRPGs. Especially I don't hate them. I just don't like. There's a lot of Japanese design that go into JRPGs that are not very. Like unless you've played them all your life, they're not very fun.
They're not very fun. And I think there was even I think it was a Japanese developer. I think it's the guy who made Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior, whatever you call it. He said that it's a very Japanese thing to make it that sort of difficult and grindy and stuff, because Japanese believe in hard work and kind of reaping the benefit of that hard work. Sweet Home is more of a story-based game, and more like has more in line with adventure gaming and stuff like that. That's why I really dig it. I think what really helps too is that like it was a fan translation, and so fans knew how to translate this game, because often I think a lot of like Famicom to NES games always kind of lose something in translation. I'm particularly referencing Simon's Quest, where a lot of the villagers are lying. Some of the stuff they say makes no sense. One person like references the Death Star, and like you're kind of thinking like from Star Wars, but it's very confusing, and like the stuff that you have to do in that game is just ridiculous. But whereas Sweet Home, since it was translated by fans who played Nintendo games for years and years, they decided to give it a better translation. And so it makes a lot more sense, and the hints actually are really, really helpful hints that will lead you to the next section. And it also helps that the story is actually pretty good, because you're learning about like a mother who actually is haunting this mansion, and why she's sort of this lost soul. It's a really interesting game.
I'll check it out.
Well, I have it, so I think I sent it to you. Okay. Since we're still on the theme of Sweet Home, we did talk about how it influenced Resident Evil. I am actually currently playing the remake to Resident Evil,
which you fucking hate.
A lot of people told me about this game when it came out on GameCube, because that's the original one that.
That's when it first came out.
Yeah,
that was part of their Capcom's deal with GameCube.
Yeah. So, when I first played Resident Evil. The first Resident Evil game I played was Resident Evil 2, which I love. And to this day, I still love.
Same here.
Yeah. It's a very fun game. I love how you can start a story with one character, and then you activate the B story, with the other character. So I love playing with both characters like through the entire game. And I've played it so many times where, I'm not a speedrunner, but I can get through that game pretty fast. Then I played the first game. And one of the things I didn't like about the first game is because it really just took place all in that mansion. I know I'm like, kind of, it's like the kettle black. I just talked about a game that takes place all in the mansion, but Sweet Home made it really interesting to, play in that mansion. It's also got that, it's a very, like, a limited, like, it's not a huge map. It's a lot of backtracking and stuff like that, but it's not like, it doesn't kill you. Resident Evil has this just huge, uninteresting mansion that has a lot of stairs and doors and stuff like that. It's kind of like it's a chore to get through. And, I like puzzle solving, but sometimes the original Resident Evil's puzzle solving just kind of gets in the way And then, like, obviously you have to, like, conserve ammo and all this other stuff. So I was playing the new Resident Evil game, and everyone was telling me that it was great. It's a huge improvement from the earlier game, yada, 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 yada. So I ended up buying it. I think it's $19.99 on the PSN store. You know, I started playing it. Obviously, the voiceover work is a hell of a lot better. The cutscenes in the beginning is very much different than the one that I played on the PSX version, the director's cut, where they have like the live action actors deliver like really weird lines. My favorite was Jill going, "Joseph!"
Yeah, that's pretty.
That's like
really weird.
Yeah. And then, like, you know...
It's just, like, very early 90s,
yeah.
like, cheese.
Cheesy, very cheesy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I love, like, those, like, sort of video sequences, but, you know, the rest of the game happened, and then, like, the voiceover work is hilarious in the original Resident Evil. Like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, the original voiceover is pretty bad.
Barry. Where's Barry? Master of lockpicking and all that other such. And so, you know, I started playing the new version, and I was kind of, like, disappointed that they kind of kept that same... I mean, it's basically the same kind of theme of the game, but it was very odd to, like, kind of play a newer Resident Evil game, and, like, when you're running, it's that same... You run to one scene, and it's a different camera angle, it's another camera angle, another camera angle. You know, I always thought that was like just a limitation of like, you know, the pre-rendered backgrounds was just a limitation of the system. And I was thinking that like this newer version would kind of do away with the pre-rendered background. And I thought it would be a following camera, but it's not. And like I'm finding that I'm getting all the same kind of frustrations out of the controls. It's not as bad as the tank controls, but it's not tremendously better. And, like, you know, I got to a point where I filled up my, like, you know, already limited inventory. And, like, all the places where I remember where all the chests are, they're not there. Everything's moved around a bit. And I guess, and I can't remember, but I guess some of the riddles are a little different. But, you know.
I think so. I think they took some, they kind of changed it up a little bit. Did they have an arranged mode and a normal mode?
I didn't see an arranged mode when I started playing. I just kind of pressed start, and then like they said, okay, who do you want to be, Jill or what's his other? Chris. Yeah. So I just started, and then I just started playing. I'm just like, well, this is not really that different from the original game. I still had to push that little thing to climb up and grab the map and stuff like that. I'm just like. And I'm wandering around the mansion. I hear zombies, and like I do the classic. Well, I'm just gonna stay here until it walks over there around the corner. So I'm sitting there waiting, like for 5 minutes.
Yeah, they essentially took the first Resident Evil game and ported it to the GameCube, but they just it was more of an HD remake.
Yeah, that's the thing.
No, not a remake, a remaster. It's an HD remaster, is what it is.
So I was kind of disappointed because it's like I've already played this game. Yeah, and it's not that different. I wish it was a lot more different. I ended up downloading Resident Evil 4 because I like that game, and I thought that maybe this game would be kind of closer to Resident Evil 4, but it's just like it's a prettied up version of Resident Evil PSX. Yeah. Which kind of made me disappointed because
just play the DS version.
I hear that that's actually that's a better version because you actually can use your knife like actively rather than getting to an attack stance, which you have to do in the I guess the PSN remaster. I hate that. I freaking hate the fact that you have to like go into an attack stance to use your knife.
I think the GameCube. I think the one on DS. The one on DS is fun. Well, it has co-op. There's a certain co-op mode. Yeah, and then they do the dual screen version, which is like you'll walk into a room and they'll change the first person, and you gotta stab birds that are flying at you or zombies. It's weird,
but I don't know. I just got really bored with it because I'm just like going through the motions of the original game. I don't really want to do this again. Yeah. Let's move on. So you haven't seen this one, right?
Which
Thor Ragnarok?
No, I have not. But you have, right?
Yeah, I saw it.
What did you think?
I really dug it. The last superhero movie I guess I watched, I didn't watch it in theaters, but I watched it with a friend, was, we talked about this, Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. Not the biggest fan of that film, because the lead is a woman. No, that's not the case. I didn't think it was that great of a film. I think it's probably the best out of the DC films. But there's a lot of like, I think that movie was way overproduced. I think it feels like there was a lot of hands in that pot. But then like I make this comparison because Thor and Wonder Woman are very kind of thematically a same type of character. Like if you have to mysticism and borderline sci-fi, I guess. Thor Ragnarok, which is an excellent film, kind of shows you what happens when like someone who who's producing, I guess Kevin Feige, says, okay, here's the keys to Thor, and gives it to Waiki Tati, I think his name is. The guy who directed it, who also directed many episodes of like Fly the Conchords and Eagle vs. Shark.
It's like I don't remember his name. Sorry.
Tatati or something?
Yeah, yeah. I think you mixed them. It's
Tatati Waki?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. He also directed
Taika
Waititi.
Yeah, Waititi.
From New Zealand. Also directed Eagle vs. Shark, and there was that vampire film.
What We Do in Shadows.
Yeah, What We Do in Shadows. All of this is very comedic stuff, and of course, the film does have a very comedic tone to it. And it kind of reminds me of like all the stuff I like about Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness is a horror film, but has a lot of comedic tones to it. What I think is great about this film is the cast. Obviously Chris Hemsworth is in it. You got Loki in there, but you also have Hulk and Valkyrie. And like, I kind of said in a tweet that Thor is the best Thor movie, the best Wonder Woman movie, and just like, just in general, a very, very well-made film. And the reason why I say best Wonder Woman film, because Valkyrie is a type of character that you can kind of say that is sort of like Wonder Woman. She's part of this elite guard of Valkyrie soldiers. And like in the film, when she first appears, she's drinking. And basically Thor's being like hassled by natives, and they're about to eat him. This is on the Grandmaster's world. And Valkyrie appears on her ship and says like, hey, he belongs to me. And she walks off her ship, and like instead of just walking down like, all, like a badass, she slips and falls because she's drunk, and falls right into like a bunch of trash. And when she gets up, she's trying to like balance herself. She balances herself on this like dead animal that's just sitting there, and her hands are like in its guts, and she's like, oh God. And then she like looks at them, it's like, he belongs to me, and like they're just kind of staring at her. And then she breaks out with these like Gatling guns and just mows them all down. The humor is like spot on, and it looks like they did a lot of like improv stuff as well. Thor shares this this insanely funny story about how Loki one time turned into a snake, and like Thor said something like, I really like snakes, and then like he knew that, and then when I looked down, it turned into his face, and then it scared me, and I dropped him, and then he turned back to himself and stabbed me. he's like, yeah, he's really messed up. Obviously, Hulk was a huge like kind of plus in this film because he talks in this film, and I've been waiting for the day that Hulk actually says something. And it's great. Like Thor and Hulk have this like back and forth. They're like a fighting couple, and like Thor's Hulk saying that he's like the strongest Avenger, and Thor says something like on the lines like, you know what, you are the dumbest Avenger, and everyone on Earth hates you. And then Hulk's like angry, but like almost like kind of child hurt angry, and he's like, and just kind of like sulks he sits on his bed and just starts sulking. But it's a really interesting movie, well paced. I really dig the story. I think one of the things that Wonder Woman was missing that Thor had is an interesting antagonist. And that was Kate Blanchett as Hela, and she like you end up finding that that's actually Thor's like sister, and she does a bang up job playing that role. I mean, she's really good as the bad guy. But the other antagonist on there is Jeff Goldblum playing this character, the Grand Master. Now, if you don't know anything about comics, the Grand Master is this. He's not an internal. What do they call them? He's an elder of the universe. in the previous movie, in Guardians of the Galaxy, I think Benicio del Toro plays Collector, who was also an Elder of the Universe. And the idea of the Elders of the Universe is that they're the last of a particular race. Like each member are the last of its kind of thing. And they kind of came together and formed this organization called the Elders of the Universe. Grandmaster, in the comic book, he's supposed to be all blue. But and he also has this kind of affinity of playing games. Like he can't like pass up a game kind of thing. Jeff Goldblum does not play that character. He plays Jeff Goldblum, who just happens to be called the Grandmaster. And I think it's infinitely a lot better like this because he is really entertaining on screen. For God's sakes, he controls his entire planet, and it's got these like gladiator kind of combat things. That's where Hulk is. It's a little bit of that storyline Planet Hulk, where Hulk actually gets transported to an alien planet and is forced to combat different types of different gladiators. I don't think it was headed by the Grandmaster. It was actually headed by someone else. But yeah, Jeff Goldblum's just really hilarious. All his like stares. There's a portion where he's like mixing music, which I thought was like that's probably the greatest thing. But beyond that, it's just a really entertaining film. It gets kind of deep at some points, which I thought was really interesting. Even a movie, even as comedic as it is, it can actually be kind of deep. Like there's a line they say that Asgard is not a place, it's its people, which kind of goes in line with like the different like places that Thor visits with like certain types of leadership. You have Hela, who has that more conquering attitude. You have Odin, who has this like attitude of like I try to change as a leader. I know I did stuff wrong, but I ended up covering it up. And then you have the Grandmaster, who has this like more of like bow to the masses and give them what they want kind of attitude. Like almost like a Vince McMahon type kind of mentality. But all in all, I thought it was a great film. Like well put together, very entertaining, not really that long. I think it's like 2 hours. Probably one of my favorites so far.
Would someone who's on like kind of Marvel movie fatigue enjoy it?
I think they would, yeah. Because it doesn't okay, so it does do the entire let's battle the CG army thing, but that's really not the battle that they need to fight kind of thing. There's a thing that they say that Hela's power comes from Asgard, and they have to figure out a way how to combat that. And like it's almost on the lines of the Doctor Strange film, how that ended, where he kind of outwits the giant CG monster.
Yeah, Dormammu.
Yeah, instead of like combating an army and then getting to that little thing, getting to the exhaust port and shooting a proton torpedo into it. That's why I kind of dig this like new wave of Marvel, is because they're changing up the formula now.
Yeah, I think the last Marvel movie I thoroughly enjoyed, which I thought was a lot, which is different and was really entertaining, was Ant-Man.
Right.
No
CG army or anything like that. I mean,
no, it just seemed like a much smaller movie, and it was really focused on. I mean, even though it was a little bit kind of formulaic because it was an origin movie, I think the cast and just kind of like the interactions with the characters was just what made that movie. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been kind of wanting more of from our movies. Right.
Which I would say Ragnarok has it in. Has a whole bunch of it.
Because I thought Guardians 2 was a bit boring. Honestly,
well, it's kind of the same movie.
Yeah, I kind of looked back at Guardians 2 and I was like, nothing really happens.
Right. I think Ragnarok is different because the previous two movies were directed by two different people and they had two different takes on the subject matter. Whereas I think here they just kind of got together and said, we can't do what we did last time. Yeah. It just doesn't work. And Hemsworth as a comedic actor is incredible because he was always playing this sort of noble type character, and here he's like a character that just is out of his element most of the time. My favorite thing about it is one of the things, I would say many of my favorite things, is that how he interacts with Hulk initially. Because you remember that thing in Avengers 2 where like Scarlet Scojo, Black Widow would do that hand thing and said like the sun's coming real low, and they would change back to Banner. So Thor does it, which is a different take on it, and he has this like goofy smile, like the sun's coming really low, big guy. He's like extending his hand, and you can imagine how Hulk ends up reacting.
Yeah,
which I thought was excellent. It's a good callback, and there's actually a lot of callbacks where they kind of even poke fun of like the previous Thor movies. One particular one is that so Loki's disguised as Odin, so it's basically Anthony Hopkins playing Tom Hiddleston as Odin, and he's watching a play that apparently like Odin wrote, and it's basically the last scene from Dark World, and it has I believe it has Loki was being played by Matt Damon, Thor was being played by the Liam Hemsworth, and I think Odin was Sam Neill.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And it's hilarious because they're doing this like live play, and like Odin, the Anthony Hopkins Odin, the Loki disguise is like eating grapes and just enjoying it. And like it's actually a really funny scene.
I just want to see more Sam Neill.
All right. But yeah, it's a really fun film. A lot of like if you're big into comic books, there's a lot of stuff hidden in there. The architecture is very Jack Kirby on Grandmaster's World, so it looks really different from Asgard, which I thought was very key. And it's very different from things that you would find in Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. Yeah, I can't say like enough about this movie. I think it's because like I was given a movie, I was shown a movie that people were so into, and I ended up watching it, and I'm just like, I don't see what you guys are seeing in this film. Yeah. It's very, like, I found Wonder Woman very generic. I mean, it's not terrible.
It's not a bad movie.
But it's very, very generic.
Yeah.
It's like, kind of like...
I thought the same thing, too. Yeah.
But Thor is like, it takes the formula and puts it on its side. So...
Good.
All right. Well, since we're on the subject of comic books, we might as well talk about this.
Now, this is something I brought up to you earlier in the week because you being a huge comic book nerd,
right?
Fucking nerd.
Now, I don't really have like a horse in this race. So Brian Michael Bendis, who's a writer who's predominantly known for his work on Marvel.
What are some of the big storylines he wrote for Marvel?
Okay, well, first, I mean, let me go through his history. One of the things that he's known for that I really like dug him because like this is how I found out about Brian Michael Bendis. I'm sorry. Is this book called Torso? It's a retelling of Elliot Ness investigating these murders in I believe it was Oklahoma. I'm sorry, Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland. And so Cleveland, Ohio. It's this murderer that like cuts up like children and like leaves their torsos as like a calling card. This is actually a true case. It's a serial killer. And Elliot Ness, who was hot off the heels of serving as an untouchable or a treasury agent, I guess, who's like had a lot of like press because he had a lot of successful raids while battling prohibition and stuff like that. The bootleggers and such. They brought him in and said, you have to solve this case. I mean, we know of your exploits and you need to solve it. So long story short, he doesn't exactly solve the case, but he does declare the case closed because the murders eventually stopped happening. And he tried to spin it as how like the law came in and scared the serial killer away, but that's kind of like one of the black marks on his like record. So this like made him really successful, and he ended up working on Ultimate Spider-Man. But a lot of people will remember him for working on Alias, which later became a television show called Jessica Jones. I've never actually read Alias myself. I do love Jessica Jones. I think it's a great show, but I don't really know much about the books. But if the show's anything like the books, then it's probably really good too. Later on. Marvel gave him the keys to Avengers, and he started out with a story called Avengers Disassembled. And I remember you telling me, like, hey, we can talk about Brian Michael Bendis taking over DC, and I basically kind of texted you back, like, oh, good, now he can wreck another sandcastle.
And that's the comment that kind of, like, set upon us talking about this.
Yeah, so in Avengers Assembled, basically he decides to destroy the Avengers. like not necessarily kill them all off, but basically kill off the team of the Avengers. And I guess he thought that that was necessary because he wanted to kind of like shake it up, and he brought the series back as New Avengers. But like what ended up happening in the storyline, I think Vision ended up being killed, Hawkeye ends up being killed, and like it was in ways where you're just like, why the hell would he do that? And you found out that I guess Scarlet Witch like went crazy and was like doing all this like insane things, and they had to stop her. Which, you know, predominantly a lot of stuff has happened, and it was just kind of it's this weird way of like erasing things so that he can have like a clean slate to start with. Now, with that being said, I actually did like New Avengers when he, you know, brought the book back. I did like the fact that they put Wolverine on the team, even though he was still a member of the X-Men, which I don't know, like what his like commute bill is, like going back and forth from like X-Mansion to Avengers Tower. But like he started like it didn't stop there. He started killing off a lot of characters. He ended up killing off Carnage. He ended up killing off like some villains here and there. And it's like, okay, I mean, do you need to kill off all these characters? Like,
you don't understand.
Yeah,
he has to.
Yeah, and like it became this thing where like it just became like, you know, just an epidemic with him. And he ended up doing the crossovers as well. Like one of the big crossovers he did was like he partook in Civil War, but I don't think he was the main writer. That was Mark Miller, and in the end of that, Captain America dies. Spoiler alert. Then, you know, Dark Avengers happened, which I think was off the heels of another crossover called Secret Invasion. Like Siege was supposed to be, you know, kind of like usher in the return of Captain America, and it just like I like the Dark Avengers storyline where Norman Osborn basically says, well, these heroes like screwed everything up, you know, you should listen to me because I have a better plan, and I'm getting these kind of superheroes together to battle whatever we need to battle, and basically the entire like public goes behind him. And like what ends up happening is that Norman Osborn basically hires villains to be his like superheroes and kind of like repackages them, very similar to a series called Thunderbolts that Marvel did, you know, 20 years ago. And obviously he did Secret Invasion, which is supposed to be like Skrulls invading the Marvel universe. And Skrulls, if you don't know, have this ability to basically mimic someone's appearance, and with certain bits of technology, they can mimic their powers as well. Both stories started out really well, but just ended terribly. Like Secret Invasion ended with they just like, why are you doing this? And they're just like, because God told us to. And like at the time, a popular show that was out was Battlestar Galactica, and they basically did the same thing. I mean, if you remember, I don't know if you watched the show of the remake of Battlestar Galactica. Yeah. They had Cylons that were disguised as humans, and they were always saying like, this is God's will. And it was just like, and the show wasn't over by that point, so we didn't know where they were going, because I think, like, you know, eventually people didn't really enjoy the ending of that. But with Secret Invasion, it's just like, what? Yeah. Like, what are you doing? And it didn't stop there. He ended up doing like other crossovers. I think Avengers X-Men was one of the big ones, which is supposed to be like X-Men versus Avengers kind of thing, and they were like kind of touting the like, who would win, Magneto or Iron Man, Captain America or I don't know, Cyclops.
Didn't they basically do that because Marvel didn't have the TV rights, the movie rights to X-Men? So
I don't exactly know why they did it, but
because that was one of the big rumors, is they were kind of down. They were trying to reflect in the comic world, downplay the X-Men more because they were kind of.
I mean, I think how it ended was like some of the X-Men started joining the Avengers or something like that, which already had happened at that point. But like, I don't get the entire storyline, because it was like it involved like the daughter of Cyclops, who was this overpowered mutant, and then ended up like, you know, it was alluding to that she might get the power of Phoenix, and like, you know, be like her mother, who at that point was dead for like the 8th time in a row.
They're bringing her back though.
They already brought her back.
Oh.
Death is never permanent. That's the big thing I think with Brian Benz Michael stories is that he kills off people, but you're just like, he's gonna come back.
Yeah.
Or she's gonna come back.
Like they killed off Wolverine, but then they brought Old Man Logan.
Well, they just brought Wolverine back.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, that's one of the last things that Brian Benz.
Oh, he brought Wolverine back. Jesus Christ. But they don't want to bring Gwen Stacy back, huh?
Well, that's one of those things is that they sort of kind of brought her back, but not really. There's certain things that I guess they kind of stay away from. There's no reason to resurrect Uncle Ben. I'm sure someone's going to try and do it.
I'm gonna go to Marvel's offices and resurrect Uncle Ben.
You could, because they'll probably, oh yeah, that's a good idea. No one's done that before. But yeah, it's like he starts these really great, interesting stories, but doesn't know how to end them.
Sounds like Stephen King books.
I don't know. I like the ending of The Stand. There actually was one thing that I liked that he did during all this nonsense was Avengers Fear Itself. Fear Itself is another crossover that was actually run by another guy that I actually liked as a writer. He wrote mostly Iron Man, but it's not a very good crossover. It's not a very good story event. I really hate the story events now because they're coming to the point where, god damn, like how many of these are you gonna do? You don't have to fucking do one every frickin' 6 months.
Yeah. I feel like they're doing a crossover or like a story event every quarter.
Yeah, well, DC is no better. They keep on doing it too.
Yeah.
Both actually, for a while though, both did actual ones that I liked. I actually did like Civil War, and I actually did like Blackest Night, which was a Green Lantern one. But Avengers Fear Itself, I didn't really like at all, except for Brian Bendis Michaels' take on it. Because in this story, it was like sort of like a documentary story about the Avengers that's referencing the event. And so it's like, they're saying what happened in the past. So the stuff that actually happens, like that had to do with the crossover, doesn't matter. It's more about the character reaction in interviews with what they think about each other. Like, Luke Cage doesn't like Tony Stark because, Luke Cage is like, he grew up in a tough area, had to work, for everything they got. Tony Stark is like sort of uppity and like, he's born into money and stuff like that. Or Wolverine is like a rebel. He doesn't work well with teams. Meanwhile, Hawkeye is a rebel too, but he knows how to work on a team. Like, so why doesn't Wolverine kind of thing? And like, then there's like.
But then they're always sticking Wolverine on a team,
right? But like it kind of boils down to after they like go through this event and like the event is irrelevant. It's more about the characters. They start to see what's great about the other Avenger. Like, they start saying like, so, what are you, what's an Avenger? And like people are saying a god, a futurist, the greatest spy in the world. And it's like the people you think are the enemies to that particular Avenger, they're saying that about that person. So Luke Cage says to Tony Stark, a futurist. And Tony Stark says, the best spy in the world. And he's referencing Black Widow, Spider-Woman, who at the time was a Hydra agent, sleeper Hydra agent, and like she kind of reformed kind of thing. And it was a really kind of cool story where like you thought they hated each other, but in the end, they're like, no, I don't hate them. He's like, I like this guy because he's really smart and he helps a lot of people. I like this person because he's unbreakable and like he helps a lot of people too. So that one ended really well, and I was really surprised. And I had to flip back and forth to say, is this really?
Is this really him?
Is this really Bendis? Maybe he had a little help because like it was a crossover event. But now he's moving to DC, and DC has its own problems. So I'm not sure what he's going to do. I hope he doesn't do the same things that he did at Marvel. Not because I don't think everything that he did was bad at Marvel. It's just that you can't just go in with a mentality of, I'll just Marvel up this universe. Because they're different type of characters.
Yeah.
Like, people can say, well, there's similarities to like Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne, but they're different characters. Bruce Wayne is more of a person who doesn't desire like the public eye and stuff like that, where Tony Stark uses it. So right there, they're different. Superman and Thor, I mean, they're big tough dudes, but Superman is the all-star Boy Scout. Thor's an Asgardian warrior, and he's a god, and he sees himself like that. So they're different characters there too. One of the things I think people might fear is that because Brian Michael Bendis was actually a kind of forerunner of this. In Marvel, he changed Thor into, you know, Jane Foster, so Thor's a woman. I think the guy, I think the person who was Thor ends up calling himself Odin's son and like having a different set of powers and stuff like that. Tony Stark became an AI, and his like mantle was kind of split between two people: Victor Von Doom, who's disguising himself as Iron Man, and a girl named Riri Williams, who becomes Ironheart.
So you think there's people who fear that he's going to bring diversity? He's going to shove diversity.
No, it really has nothing to do with diversity, because what he ended up doing, I mean, it's in the guise of diversity, but what he's doing is like he's taking the characters and changing them into mantle characters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think DC does fine with diversity because they actually have characters that are homebred that they created that have diversity. For example, Cyborg. Marvel, maybe not so much. But like what ended up happening, and I think Brian Michael Bendis actually started with one of his more popular ones was Miles Morales' Spider-Man. I can't really tell you a lot about Miles Morales' Spider-Man because I didn't actually read it a lot. I didn't really dig the Ultimate line at all. But he's probably the most popular character that he did that with, and then that continued with Iron Man, with Thor, with a lot of different characters that like kind of like, you know, changed. I think Falcon ended up becoming Captain America, but even previous that it ended up being Bucky Barnes was Captain America, and I get it. Like, you know, we do need like, you know, a bit of diversity, but I really feel that like if you're going to do that, like introducing a new character would probably be better because then you can create a whole entire mythology around this character. I mean, like, you know, I'm kind of, you know, preaching to a choir here, but like one of my favorite things is Green Lantern. Anyone could be a Green Lantern. Like my favorite Green Lanterns are Guy Gardner and John Stewart, and like they're very different than Kyle Rayner and Hal Jordan. I like those two too, but like, you know, they're not as interesting as Guy Gardner and John Stewart. I'm like, I read the first issue of Superman with a space in it, and it was like a Chinese person who became Superman. Somehow he got his powers. I was reading it, and like, you know, it takes place all in like, you know, China. I was reading it, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, do we need to call it Superman? Can we call it something else? It just like, you know, you have that weird thing where you're going off a mantle character. I mean, would we be better off with a Batman character that was, I don't know, Asian or Hispanic, or can we just have Bruce Wayne and have this like Asian or Hispanic person as a different hero?
Didn't they do that with Batman though? Didn't they have like kind of like the Batman family where
they had this character named Batwing, which was not Batman, but he was part of this thing called Batman Inc. So, yeah, it's a long story.
This is exactly why I always am confused when I read comic book synopsis and stuff.
Well, now it's going to get a hell of a lot confusing because, you know, Brian Michael Bendis is going to be part of that mix for DC. And now DC right now is kind of like on a downturn as well, just because, you know, they're probably suffering from like, you know, low readership because their movies don't do as well. Marvel, I think, is trying to get back to that familiar place where you can watch the movie and go look at the comic book and find something, you know, kind of familiar, but also keeping in mind that you can have these like diverse characters in the universe, and I think that they're more into that. Like, I don't know, like I really felt that if they're going to create an Iron Man comic that has, you know, a black girl as Iron Heart, they probably should have just created a title called Ironheart instead of having her in a title called Iron Man. It's weird to me that they did that.
Do you think they do that just to kind of pull people in with the initial like familiarity and like, but she's different because
but like if they're gonna announce it like that, like it's weird that like the title character of that story isn't on the title.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I don't know, like, let's have a story about, you know, Superman, I mean, there's a way to do that. Like in Superman, they killed him off once, and they did this entire story called Funeral for a Friend, and they ended up having like the reign of Superman and stuff like that. But that was kind of motivated that way. Whereas, like, I don't know if they're gonna like create a whole new character. She-Hulk starring on Hulk series for about like 2 years. To me, that kind of doesn't make sense. It's like you can create a She-Hulk series, and it'll probably be just as good, and people will gravitate toward it. I really think maybe they should have called it Ironheart. I don't think if people aren't into it, they're probably going to leave anyways. So you might as well kind of like go that extra step and change it to a different book. I mean, they kept Thor, even though it was a woman playing Thor, so that makes sense to me. Obviously, they couldn't call Ironheart as Iron Man. That would be weird, unless they like incorporated the story, maybe, where you don't know if it's a man underneath there or not.
So that's more like that's kind of your concern, or people's concerns, is there'll be more mantle characters as opposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I get why like the mantle character is essential, but particularly when you have this sort of established history of like different heroes. I mean, it's like saying, okay, well, we're going to change Wonder Woman to a man, but we're not going to call it. We're going to still call the title Wonder Woman.
Isn't Wonder Woman man essentially Superman without the laser powers?
Nah, because I don't think Wonder Woman's bulletproof.
So how does she dodge all those bullets and?
Well, her cuffs. She's blocking.
That's bullshit. Okay, that shit don't happen, bro.
Do you read it?
No, I don't know.
So, like, I mean, I don't know what his plans are for DC. I hope it's not to marvel up the DC universe, because I don't think he really needs to do that. If he's going to do those interesting kind of stories that he used to tell, like through Powers and Alias, or like that's like the good part of like Brian Benzema. He created a female protagonist that was really interesting, and like ended up becoming a television show for Netflix, and it's like an insanely popular character. Then he did other crap.
I don't know. Was Powers good?
Powers was good. I'd actually really dug the first 6 issues of Powers. I didn't really stick with it because I felt like I thought the 6 issues that they presented was sort of like a limited series, but apparently it was an ongoing series. Mm-hmm. Powers, the television show, was not good. I don't know if you like that was through the PlayStation Network, and I guess I was like, okay, follow this show, and I was like alerted every time that there was a new episode. And after watching like the first 2 or 3 episodes, I was just like, this show is not very good.
Well, that was Sony's big push into original content, and I think, I mean, it didn't really take off too well, so they kind of just left it at that.
I think one of the big deals is that like they didn't want to go as. Whereas Jessica Jones kind of went into that dark side that the comic book went into, Sony didn't have the balls to kind of do the same thing. Mm-hmm. They just kind of wanted to, we don't want to show this character who killed this superhero how he kind of masturbated in front of pictures of her and stuff like that. So we'll just kind of like do something else completely.
I know the effects were pretty bad too. Like
that's a big thing.
They also didn't seem to have really want to push the money into it.
Well,
or maybe they didn't. They kind of gave them like a limited budget.
The big thing is that like Powers was this sort of guy who had powers, but he doesn't have them anymore, and now he's a normal police person, and a lot of this is from his perspective. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I kind of watched the show, I felt like they were showing superpowers every 2 seconds, and I was just like, and again, the special effects weren't very good. And it just had this weird like light tone when the book has this very dark subject matter. It's when you read the book, it's like reading like a Bruce Timm kind of like Batman, like old style cartoon. But when you watch the show, it's like brightly colored, a lot of flat lighting. It was kind of weird. I think someone had Marvel in their mind, and they decided to Marvel up an Image book, which later on became a Marvel book. But that's
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is, on top of that, I don't really think it's a big deal, too, because this has happened since the beginning of comics. Jack Kirby went to DC once. John Byrne went to DC once. Like, they do that. they get tired of working one company, decide to go on the other side to see what they can do.
Yeah.
And in this case, like he's already worked the indie scene, he's already worked Image. There's not much he can go from Marvel, but maybe he can get DC to pay him more money to kind of fix their stuff.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe Jeff Johns will go back to Marvel.
Wait, was Jeff Johns at Marvel?
Yeah, he was at Marvel before he got into like kind of creating.
But isn't Jeff Johns at DC for the movie stuff now?
He's there for the movie stuff, but contracts can expire, and then he can be courted by Marvel, saying, "Hey, you want to come over here and do some of that magic that you did with us before." He wrote some of my favorite Avengers stories. He was hot off the heels of this other guy named Kurt Busiek, who's my favorite writer. And I was kind of skeptical with Jeff Johns because I was like, I don't know who this guy is. And like Kurt Busiek left, and like he's like the greatest writer of Avengers ever. And then when I kind of like watched, or read a lot of his books, I was just like, this is actually not that bad. It's actually pretty good. So I don't know. It's comic books.
I don't fucking get it, man.
Well, they're work for hires. The only I would say that the equivalent to this is like a wrestler moving from WWE, going to the indie scene, working in Japan, working in Lucha Underground. Back in the day, maybe working in WCW, but sometimes they like to work for the other company. Josh Whedon works for Warner now,
which I'm glad because I don't know. I still don't really like Josh Whedon's stuff.
You don't like Dollhouse?
No.
All you have to do is watch the 47th episode, and then
and it's funny. It's like I couldn't stand Dollhouse. Buffy, I got like tired of I think I got into like season 4 or 5 of Buffy, and I just couldn't anymore.
People love that show.
Angel wasn't. Angel was the concept of Angel was cool, and I liked when he was doing it. The whole detective agency in LA with like supernatural stuff was cool, and then after a while, it's just like okay.
Didn't Supernatural do that better though?
Yeah, Supernatural actually has a really cool mythology, but it's just that show has just gone on way too long. I think they're like on their 10th season or 11th season.
Yeah, they're never gonna end.
Dude, the show's gonna live forever
because like housewives love that show.
Yeah,
a lot of moms like
a lot of women love that show.
A
lot. Like that's their entire fan base is women.
Yeah, I know because I went to Comic-Con and I had a friend. She went into the convention when she was pouring out all these like middle-aged women.
Yeah, they
coming out and like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I like Serenity the movie. I didn't like Firefly the show.
See, that's really his only property that I like. Right. Everything else is kind of like whatever.
I guess
I liked Dr. Horrible. But I don't think he should make a sequel to that.
Is he?
Dr. Horrible. He's been I think he's been working on it, but I think just like Serenity, and I actually like remember we were talking about Firefly and Serenity, how
I saw Serenity first, so then I saw Firefly.
You know how you were saying how you're kind of glad they didn't continue Firefly?
Yeah.
I feel the same way with Dr. Horrible. Like they should just leave it at that. Like it should just not. They should not make a sequel.
I don't think it's
same thing with Serenity and Firefly.
Over like 7 years now.
Yeah,
so,
I don't. Yeah, same thing with Serenity and Firefly. They should not revisit that universe at all anymore.
Well, I think more fan base wants to revisit it, but he's like, I don't want to do a follow up. It's done.
Yeah. Well, not only that though, you kind of run that risk of like it's
the X-Files thing when you come back to it,
or even Twin Peaks. You know, you might just kind of come back and it's like, yeah.
We haven't watched Twin Peaks.
I haven't watched Twin Peaks. I've watched Fire Walk with Me, which is the best Twin Peaks ever. I love saying that at Twin Peaks fans because they get pissy. All right, what else do you got, or is that it? I think that's it. Wait, do we have something?
Yes.
What do we have?
So,
the McRib is back.
The McRib is back.
Yes, this is my favorite time of the year.
All right.
Okay, no, it's not.
No, it's not. I hate the McRib. So you guys don't know, I used to work for McDonald's when I was a teenager. So I know about the McRib. I know how
he knows things about the McRib. Intimate things about the McRib.
You know, the one thing that really confuses me is I'm from Kansas, and we know barbecue. Yet people in Kansas also love the McRib. And I don't know why, because it's like it's a piece of meat made to look like that there's ribs in it, but it's molded to look like that.
And I hate this thing because they had this kind of version. They had that meat molded to make it look like it has ribs.
Yeah.
In high school.
Yeah.
And it was disgusting.
Meat. Yeah.
It was the worst fucking thing ever. And it was funny because it was like they gave you the bun, they gave you the meat, and then they'd give you like 2 barbecue sauce packages that were never enough. And it was the grossest fucking thing ever. I ate it one time. Like
the school
I took
one.
a bite. The school one. I took a bite of it. And it was the grossest fucking thing ever.
Yeah, I usually didn't eat it.
Not only that, why would you put meat that had ribs on it on a sandwich at all? Like, when you eat it, aren't you gonna break your teeth on the fucking bones?
Well, I think they're more trying to like.
What are they going for here with the McRib?
I think they want to go for like a pork sandwich.
Chuck and Dice, please explain to me, what are they trying to go for?
So, have you ever had a pulled pork sandwich?
Yes.
Like a real one. Usually, like I think here.
Well, I think I've had pulled pork sandwiches at a restaurant, and I've had people have made pulled pork sandwiches.
Right.
Yeah.
I think commonly a lot of people when they have a pulled pork sandwich, it's made like shredded pork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the only way I've had it.
The one that I liked was this place called Joe's, formerly known as Oklahoma Joe's. They actually kind of cubed their meat, so when I bit into a pulled pork sandwich, it felt very whole and like it was great because that meat is smoked. So I think they're kind of going for that. I'm not exactly sure what makes the McRib appealing. I'm assuming that it's the sauce, but again, from Kansas, people love this thing, and I thought the sauce was terrible. And so you want to know how it's cooked? So
yes,
the fake rib meat is cooked on the grill, and then after it's cooked on the grill, it's actually put into this I guess I could call it a slow cooker. It was square and metal, and you had to lift it out and you pour it in the sauce, like in these bags of sauce, and when it was cooking, to me it smelled awful. Some people love the smell, but I thought it smelled awful. It was very, very powerful, very musky at times, and you have to put the cooked meat in there.
Chuck and Dice right now is gagging as he's explaining this.
It's gross. And it was just kind of marinating in there and stuff. And then when you have to make a sandwich, you have to pull it out and put it on the bread along with the pickles and onions. And that's the other thing is in the history I've never eaten a pulled pork sandwich with pickles on it. To me, that's really gross.
Yeah, I can do onions.
I can do onions. Yeah, me too. But pickles?
Do you like your pulled pork sandwiches with coleslaw on it?
No, I like my pulled pork sandwich with pork.
And onions?
And sauce.
And onions?
No. Onions I can do. I mean, if they put them, but commonly I don't remember onions being in my pulled pork sandwiches. Normally I had pulled pork sandwiches. It was just pork.
That's the name of the sandwich, pulled pork.
Pulled pork, that's all it is.
So I'm excited for this. Not really.
Not really.
My wife is. She loves McRibs.
Oh, they're so gross. They're like what was that other thing that Starbucks does? The pumpkin latte?
They're like the pumpkin lattes.
Yeah. Like, to me, pumpkin lattes taste like someone spit in my coffee.
No, the McRib is the...
Hold on a sec. Let me get us back here. Stream resume. There we go. Here we go.
Or should we leave it
Very low output. Okay, yeah. We probably should end right now.
Okay. So the McRib is back. Get it if you want. Get it if you don't. That's it. That's all we got.
All right. We're going to go ahead and end this because I think we're kind of losing signal here.
Thanks for joining us.
That's not it. Here's our contact information. Follow us on Twitter. If you like this video, go ahead and share, like, and subscribe. Leave a comment if you want. Let us know what you want us to talk about next.
Especially if the comment is based on the McRib.
Yeah. If you like the McRib, and I bet you guys do, let us know so I can prove you wrong. Because I'm right. I used to make those things. Did you know the chicken that you make in McDonald's? The grill lines are painted on, basically. I mean, I think it's pre-cooked chicken, but it's like when we open a bag and it's already got the grill lines on it, and then how you cook it is that you put it on this kind of thing that separates it from the burgers, and you have to there's this little cup in the top, and you pour water in it, so it can kind of give that kind of grilled kind of feel to it, but it's not exactly grilled. Also, it always tasted weird to me. I didn't like that.
So you're saying you want to go to McDonald's right now, right, and get food?
I'll eat the breakfast anytime, anywhere, and surprisingly, they probably do have pretty good iced coffee. They have the best
they're
iced
actually their iced coffee is really
iced
good.
coffee is delicious.
It's also really horrible for you because they put so much cream and sugar in there.
Well, if you get it black, I get it black.
Oh, you get black?
Yeah.
Their coffee's good. Actually, that's the one thing growing up that my parents always liked is their coffee.
The coffee, I think
they have really good coffee.
Well, I used to, when I worked at McDonald's, we had to really clean everything, and the coffee machine was always cleaned.
Yeah.
So like it never had the residue or anything kind of in there.
And that's the thing with coffee is especially at an office, if your office building has shitty coffee, it's probably because they haven't cleaned their maker or the what's it called the filter or even what's the big thing essentially the big silver thing that they store the coffee in. I always forget what it's called.
Oh,
the catheter or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. Catheter. Yeah, the one you fucking pee from. I don't know. The big giant fucking storage thing for coffee where you just push the button and coffee. If they don't clean that stuff out, it builds up all that like burnt coffee,
taste and oil
coffee,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, all that burnt coffee bean oil and shit like that.
Which I can definitely taste in Starbucks coffee. And when I get a coffee at like a mom and pop, it seems like they clean theirs a lot better. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't give that rough taste. Now, I can drink Starbucks coffee anytime, but I kind of more prefer going to the mom and pops that are open. Like Starbucks for me is like if I'm at work and Starbucks is near.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So thanks for joining us once again. We'll see you later.
Happy Halloween, I guess.
Happy belated Halloween. More importantly, happy Merry Christmas, because everyone has their fucking Christmas shit up now.
Right. Or happy holidays.
Yeah. Happy Merry Holidays.
Merry
or whatever
holidays.
the hell. I don't know.
Merry New Year.
Merry New Year.
All right, that's from Trading Places. Movie you hate. See ya.